Keep it. General K. Rao.
Yeah, I still have this host disabled participant screen sharing, Amit. Sorry.
Is it enabled now?
Yeah, it's just. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Welcome to Vision India Forum, Amrit Mahotsav series. General K. Rao.
Yes, sir.
You'll have to hold this, General Saab. Let me introduce.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to Vision India series. Amrit Mahotsav, Brigadier Ajit Apte, our great friend, soldiers for the last 15 months, General K. Rao, Lieutenant General K. Rao, Vimal Vakluji from the Public Sector Enterprises, former CMD of TCIL. Then we have Thapar Saab, Shri V.N. Thaparji, that great man who gave us Vijayant, the martyr, the great soldier. His father, himself a great army soldier. Thapar Saab, welcome to the show. He was also an instructor to the chief guest for the evening, General Dr. V.K. Singh, Honorable Minister of State, Road Transport and Highways, Civil Aviation. We have with us, Veer Chakra Vijeta of the Kargil War, Umesh Singh Bawa, Brigadier Umesh Singh Bawa with us today. Bawaji, very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have somebody who most of you have had the privilege of fighting the wars right from the Bangladesh 71 war to the Kargil. Hopefully we don't face it again, something like that again, but then chances are we might very soon because of the kind of, friends and neighbors that we have on both the sides. And today's topic is something which will touch upon the kind of, dangers that we face and whether the current scheme, Agneepath scheme, Agneepath, the line of fire or the path of fire, and the name, we also have got, we're going to be having Lieutenant General Counsel Himalaya Singh also with us. He was there, I think some connection problem. He is the first Lieutenant General of Northeast India. Today we'll be talking about Agneepath scheme, the pros and cons. It's early days, but let's be rest assured, the government isn't a fool. No dispensations are foolish. They all know what they are doing. Probably we all know why and what should have been done, should not have been done. But probably today is an opportunity for the country to come and hear from Vision India Forum, from the horse's mouth, from the people who fought the wars. Lieutenant General Himalaya Singh is there. People who fought the wars, people who have given us martyrs, people who are Chakra Vijetas. I've also invited people from the tri-services, which includes Navy and the Air Forces. Hopefully people from there will also be joining. Today is also a very important day because 25th of June also is the day on which India faced emergency, started having the emergency, it got invoked. And the chief guest, if he joins, we will all be wishing him for the emergency in his personal life. He got married today. So let's start the show. Let's start the show. Brigadier Ajit Apte, as always, opening remarks. Agneepath scheme, we have the war tone, Corona war tone, Lieutenant General Consul Himalaya Singh also with us now. General Sahab, warm welcome from the hills of Manipur.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brigadier Ajit Apte, opening remarks, opening batsman, Agneepath scheme. We start the show, sir.
Thank you, Amit. Am I audible?
Yeah, Ajit.
General Rao, Brigadier Thapar Shah, great respect, General Himalay, Brigadier Bawa, and Vimal Vakuji. This particular scheme of Agniveer or Agneepath was announced exactly 11 days ago. And unfortunately, it precipitated into a series of violent actions all over many states of the country. That was an unfortunate thing. In my opening remarks, I'll just say this much, that this particular scheme, which was launched by the government, of course, I agree with Amit that due diligence would have been done at all levels of the government of India, by the Ministry of Defense, and of course, as they say, by all the three service chiefs. The aim was to reduce the defense pension bill and also to keep the armed forces young, a policy of this particular recruitment. It envisages, recruiting people for a period of 4 years. Thereafter, only 25% will be selected and 75% will be eased out. The age limit was 17.5 to 23. Earlier, it was 21. It was raised to 23. Those who retire after 4 years, that is a low pension, but they would get something like a Seva Nidhi of rupees 11.7 to 8 lakhs. What I want to really bring across is, unfortunately, the government and everyone thinks only of the defense pension that hurts them, which is such a big folly. I think the armed forces of our country are the biggest insurance policy for this nation. We have given everything. I am a third generation Indian Army officer. My father and granduncle fought in the Second World War. And I'm very unhappy to realize that unfortunately it's only the defense pensions which hurts the government of India, which is a very sad thing. I'm not going to stress more because there are people like General Rao, who is an expert in on the subject. He's going to highlight many more things. But before I close my opening remarks, I would just like to say that the number of non-defense personnel who are enjoying pension of the government, percentage-wise, is definitely much more than what we have done in uniform. Very correctly you said, earlier, when the country was partitioned, the initial contract service period was only 7 years. People left after that. But after the 62 war, the terms of engagement increased. And today they are 17 years plus 2 years, which is 19 years. I've also been an instructor at the Officers Training Academy because I'm appalled to hear some very wise people connecting this Agneepath or Agniveer scheme with the National Defense Academy, of which I am a product, and also with the Short Service Commission, where I have been an instructor for 2.5 years in 1979. Now, let us not compare 5 years SSC and 4 years Agni Varsha or Agneepath. Also, I wish to state one more thing. I think it's high time we stop using this word Agni Varsha or Agneepath or Agniveer. The recruitment policy has changed from 7 years to 17 years to 19 years. We have now brought it down to 4 years. So I'll finally say before I close, let's do away with this term Agniveer. It is just a simple recruitment policy which has undergone a fundamental change in principle. That's all. And otherwise, if we don't get away from this term, the commanding officers are going to be told by their Subedar majors, or the brigade commanders are going to be told by their commanding officers that here is an Agniveer and here is a normal recruit. I won't be surprised if you have vests and these track suits already being made, with the word Agneeveer being branded all over from the front to the back. So I think let's get out of this syndrome of calling these guys Agneeveer. They are no Agneeveer. They are just normal recruits. We don't even know whether they'll face a war in the 4 years that they complete their service. So on that note, I would like to say, Amit, thank you very much. Well, if you ask me whether I am with this scheme, I would not like to comment at this stage. I'm certainly not 100% with this scheme. I'm an old soldier, fought the 71 war, have served the Indian Army for 36 years, and I'm now retired for 16 years. I'll leave it at that. And regarding the combat edge, the combat efficiency of the Indian Army, I will just say one word. Let us not say that if war breaks out, the 4 years guy will not perform. He will still perform. I've been an instructor. There have been Mahavir Chakras from the SS courses which went to war in the 71. There has also been a Paramveer Chakra from the Short Service Commission. So let us not doubt the combat capabilities of these people, whether they were trained for 10 months in the OTS or whether they were trained for 3 years in the NDA plus 1 year in the IMA. When the time comes to fight, each and every one will give his best for the service of the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Apte, Kailash Vijayvargiya, and people from the current dispensation's ruling party. They have, according to me, trivialized the entire subject by saying that post-retirement and given a lot of juice, lot of substance to the opposition parties unnecessarily. Probably they know the reasons why they speak out of the box, and things like, they will be absorbed in the BJP offices. Then somebody says that they will be absorbed after getting skilled as, electrician or bodyguards or, these kind of things. These are things which disturbed me, because we are not only trivializing the issue, we are really making fun of the criticality of the entire situation. In this case, it is very, very important for us to understand it's not only about the pension issue. There are 3 staff chiefs. Hari Kumar from the naval, chief of the naval staff, then Mr. V.R. Chaudhary, the chief of the air staff, and Mr. Manoj Pandey, the newly inducted chief of the army, Indian Army. They have all said in one line that the scheme is yet to be understood. Should we think that it is going the same way as the GST and demonetization? Lieutenant General Consul Himalaya Singh, what does the Northeast feel?
Thank you, Amit, for inviting me. First of all, this is an issue which really is not region specific, Northeast or anything. This is about Indian Armed Forces. It is about Indian, the sovereignty and security of our country. So to begin with, I agree with Brigadier Apte to say that this scheme may not be 100%, to our liking, or at least of the veterans, because large number of veterans have expressed their views on this, mostly on the ways to improve. So I'll go by saying that to begin with, this scheme needs some tweaking and also to certain amount of improvement before it is maybe over a period of time. Only then can this be called great kind of recruitment policy or Agneepath policy. I've got 3 major concerns which have partially been addressed so far in the last 7 days or so. Number 1 was the relocating of these people who are going to be, released from the military every year after 4 years. It can be anything between 30,000, 40,000 to even 90,000 so-called Agneeveers to be released. So relocation of these have been generally been assured to some extent, maybe 10%, 20% people in various government establishments which are in the open domain. So it addresses the concerns to some extent. But these need to be actually formalized by a government gazette or government order. That is number one concern, and it is being addressed, number one. Secondly is the combat effectiveness. Brigadier Apte also said that as individuals, I don't see much of an issue as far as individual valor, individual courage. These come with a lot of factors, not just about a few months of training extra. But when you talk about integrity, unity, and integration of the units as a fighting machine, the issue of the regulars and irregulars combined with different aspirations, Agneeveers will be aspiring to get into regular or different aspirations. The unit cohesiveness that could take a minor hit. Because of that, I was of the opinion that this 25% retention could be increased to at least about anything between 35 to 45% or 50%, so that the number of irregulars, Agneeveers should not cross, they should not become the majority in a unit, particularly in arms, in maybe infantry, armored corps, or artillery, or combat arms. So that part should be, in my view, that should be guarded, and that can be achieved by increasing the retention percentage. For example, I'll give you a figure that in 14 years from now, the percentage, I think I heard General Rao saying that he's going to use some, General Rao sir, sorry, I hope, I think you are making a presentation. So on the 14th year from now, you will have close to 6% people in the units and Indian Army, these irregular variety, these Agneepaths. So that is not a very healthy, in my opinion, to the challenges which we are facing right now on the Western Front, Northern Front. And the third issue of my concern is about how the commanding officers and formation commanders are really going to manage administrative, the management of change. That management of change, I don't know how. I know Army is good at management of change, but whether events will overtake this management of change is another my concern. So I've got three concerns, of which I've given some recommendations, and if done so, I think this can become, as a good military man, once a decision is taken, normally we must try and implement it with whatever modifications or amendment what comes. And I'm also told that Raksha Mantri has been given adequate powers to tweak as per the requirement of the forces in the next few years as it unfolds. Thank you.
I was speaking to Ajay Bhattji, MOS Defense today. Almost half an hour discussion I had to invite him, and he expectantly did tell me that, considering the sensitivity of the hour, he would like to skip the show. But what I understood is Amrit Kal, which begins in August 2022, the 25 years which take us to the 100th year of independence, 80,000 recruits in the last recruitment phase of the Indian Army. If I am correctly, pointing out the number of people who joined, around 80,000 people were taken, 25% to be retained, approximately 20,000 people if they get retained, and it is to be done twice a year. This exercise has to be done twice a year. If 20,000 people are to be retained, by the end of 2047, we will have around 5 lakh to 6 lakh people, considering a linear kind of a chart. That is approximately 1/3 of the strength of the army. 15 lakh people, if they are currently there, approximately 1/3 of the strength of the army. Does it augur well? Umesh Singh Bawa, the Veer Chakra Vijeta from Kargil, he told me in his monologue that it is the most difficult, challenging task is to motivate these young boys to give up their lives, when the tides are absolutely against them. The story of how he captured those peaks, and I do not really find how they get reconciled with this kind of a 4-yearly stint. Can you have this 4-yearly Agneepaths be motivated, Babaji, to climb up the peaks?
Thank you for giving this opportunity to me to talk on this. Firstly, I'll just talk about, from a personal experience during the war in Kargil. We were short of manpower and the soldiers during that time. And my colonel of the regiment, instead of, sending those soldiers who were recruited and had completed their training to other battalions, he sent almost about 80 to 100 people to my unit and not to other units which are located in other areas, because we were fighting the war. He wanted to make up my strength of the fighting force. But, when I saw these green horns, in the battlefield, I felt, I can't use them in the front where the bullets are flying. So my only option was to use them as administrative force, that was to dump ammunition, to evacuate casualties and other things like that, and not to use them in the front line where the bullets are flying. And it did pay me, but these youngsters were very well, they were physically fit, and they were, could carry all the weights and ammunition, rations and all to the top for the fighting force, which were the actual soldiers who were there with me before that. So all these Agneepaths, when they come to the unit, especially I'm talking of a scenario where we are facing the enemy, some of them, yes, might integrate themselves with the regular soldiers and prove their worth. But others who are not sure about themselves and their future will not give their best. It is only with due integration of these men in the unit that the spirit and cohesiveness gets built. So if you think of Agneepaths, performing during the battle, I have my doubts. But yes, they can be used in other areas, in peace stations, and maybe, in the line of control also. But God forbid, if there is a war, and as it is, we are facing the Chinese and the Pakistanis, 2 fronts and a half front within ourselves, I think it will be a difficult situation for a commanding officer who is commanding these people there. So I am with Konsam Himalaya Singh, who has suggested that from 25% it be increased to 50%. I think that will be a right step, and some of them, say about 10 to 20%, could be absorbed in other paramilitary forces and government jobs. So that is my take on Agneepaths. I personally feel that the step may be to cut the defense pensions and the defense and use it for modernization, but security is very important for a nation. If the nation is secure, then only we can progress. We cannot cut our security and cut corners as far as security is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Babaji. This is a very, very primary understanding that each and every civilian like me, Vimal Vakluji, also would probably have the same kind of feelings that if because of cutting costs, this has been done. But I'm sure there are facets much, much beyond the pension cost cutting. Colonel Thapar, you are a celebrated and a celebrity. So your views.
Well, actually, thanks a lot for inviting me over for this program. I would like to start off without much ado, just reminding everybody who's taking part in this discussion that ever since we became independent, particularly in the 50s, there was a huge concern in our government for the expenditure on the armed forces. Do you remember the famous statement that we do not require the armed forces, a police force is good enough? With that, we had to pay a very, very heavy price in 1962. It was our concern for budgetary allotments that took precedence over everything else. And we paid for it. We paid in human lives, we paid, we had just joined. The disgrace of that particular period of history, we have never been able to outlive that. Now, the present, in my mind, the present situation is of a financial nature. Actually, we have a problem of the financial nature. And we have a security problem also. What we are doing is that we are giving financial matters more importance than the security matters. Because the pension bills and this, that, and everything else. So the measures, how to tackle the financial aspects, they are not best done by reducing or finishing off the pensions and these things. There are enough exercises to be done to create that kind of money that we are able to pay. The question is that we have live enemies. We have an enemy in China. We have an enemy in Pakistan. I dare say that the situation within the country is not tremendously steady. So we have, really speaking, 2.5 fronts to look after. And at this very delicate juncture, we have chosen to do this exercise. It could well work out very well, but to my mind, I think the exercise that we are doing now, discussing, talking, telling the people, educating the masses as to what the scheme is, it should have been done earlier. People should have known that this is what is coming, and therefore the other very big thing that I want to speak about is that there was a time that career in the armed forces was on the highest level, #1 career. Now, instead of reinforcing that, we have brought it down. We have certainly brought it down as the choice of the people to come to the armed forces for 4 years is going to be a difficult choice to make. Let me be very clear. And there is a huge manpower available in India. They are in a state where they'll accept any job that comes. Certainly, whatever is coming from the armed forces, they will take it. But they will look at the armed forces of the past and compare with that, and they will always think that they have been short-charged. So this is my point. Lastly, 4 years is just too less. You can't even train a good football team. Forget about a team that will go into battle. It's a collective. As people spoke about bravery, won't come down and all that. Individually, yes, I can understand. Individuals will be there. But there's a collective bravery, like in my son's unit, to Rajrev, they attacked Toroling. That is collective bravery. Brigadier Bawa's unit, all those units who fought there. That is not individual effort. That is collective. And it takes a huge amount of time and a very huge amount of effort to create that kind of a spirit. So this is what it is, I'll give you 2 examples of what kind of motivation is required to fight battles like in Toroling. Everybody, every soldier who was wearing the uniform at that time, particularly I talk about Rajrev, They were burning. They were simply burning to take part into action, no matter what happens. There was one Jawan who was night blind. Mind you, night blind, blind as a bat. So he said, no, I have to take part. So he was detailed for lifting ammunition, that he with other people will lift ammunition. Can you ever imagine that he tied himself with ropes with a man in front and a man at the back so that he can be guided and taken up? That man, whole night, he went up and down lugging ammunition. So that's the kind of motivation that is required. Another example is the doctor of 2 Rajre. That time he was Captain Basu. I don't know where these things do not come with any other thing except the Josh that is created in the Paltan, being together, being made for each other. That is the core issue. The point is that they were all wounded. Unfortunately for the Paltan, the doctor was also wounded. He got a splinter in his leg and he was bleeding profusely. You look at his spirit. The nursing assistants and other people who were with him at the medical aid post, they told him, "No, sir, you're bleeding so much. You have to go back. You have to be evacuated." He said, "I will not be evacuated till the last man, last casualty of 2 Rajrev has been evacuated. Only after that." And he did that. So that is a kind of putting your life, your everything for guarantee that they have given that they will protect the country. Now they have given that guarantee that we will protect the country. What about us giving them some guarantee? Even a job has become a problem to give them. They are giving their life. And I dare say that we require to do much more. Thank you.
What you've been talking about, Colonel Thapar, is about the kind of dangers that are there when we have such kind of recruitment process. But we should first of all try and understand from people like General K. Rao, the manpower planning. Here, manpower planning, we'll probably have a minute's break or so, something like that. He's got a presentation to make. The manpower planning is very important. Vimal Vakluji would also be pointing out the kind of sentiments that are being echoed by the common man, lest aside somebody who's been at the helm of affairs in a public sector company. But before I get General K. Rao and Vimal Vaklu's view, manpower planning is very important. 25% people are going to be retained every year. Is this number, the people who are getting recruited, probably 4 times the number that were generally recruited? Because out of the 4, only 1 would be staying back, 3 would be going out every year. So all that thing technically has to be understood. The government is not a fool that if we had 4 soldiers, now we'll have 3 electricians and 1 soldier. And okay, can you hear me?
Screen.
Yeah, can you?
Yeah.
Okay, what I was suggesting is, there was some technical problem. What I was suggesting is that manpower planning has to be understood from a civilian perspective. From a civilian perspective, Vimal Vakluji, former CMD of TCIL, from a civilian and a leader perspective, what have been your views and this kind of a backlash that the government has been facing, not only from the civilians, but also from the top brass in the services? Vaklu sir, your views.
Well, thank you, Amit. Actually, my views, of course, I respect the views of all the defense forces veterans over here. but I would like to share some of my experiences. One is that, the best officers or manpower that in my 40 years of experience in the government has been the people, retired people from the defense services. I mean, when they used to join our organization, after having worked in the defense forces, the amount of discipline and, of course, the skills, they used to be really assets. And I have all regards for them. That is what the defense forces had inculcated in them. Now, that is one part. Second is, as the government, as a government person who has worked in the government, I've seen one. We had people who were on a temporary job card for a few years. They used to work very well. The moment they would be put in the government service, I mean, regularized, they will stop working practically. I mean, this is the second part of the experience. Now, third part, what I want to mention here is that if after 12, that is when you are 17 and a half or 17, if you want to go into any professional course, you have to spend a good amount of money. And that money, of course, if you can afford it, it's fine, but there is a large number of people who can't do that. So for them, the only option is to just become clerks or something like that, wherever, work as assistants or whatever. Now, this particular scheme, I see a lot of hope. As has been mentioned, that the percentage of people out of this scheme who would be regularized in the army, it can be varied. I don't want to comment on that. That would depend upon the needs of the defense services. But at the same time, the remaining people who will come into the marketplace, they'll be just in their 20s. And I see a huge potential for them in the market, because there are a lot of, there is a need for disciplined people, for skilled people who can be recruited straight away. And I see that this will help young people in their 20s, apart from getting money. And of course, in the past few days, there have been some interaction with some of the young people also who aspire to join this particular scheme. They say that once they get a termination money of about 12, 14 lakhs, they would like to work as entrepreneurs. They would like to set up small shops. And with the defense background behind them, I have seen even a colonel in the army, after his retirement, he set up a cycle leasing shop in Jabalpur, and he was doing a good business with that. Now, if there are young people who can do that, we'll be number one, creating a young brigade of disciplined people with skills who are easily employable and who can also be entrepreneurs and maybe employ people. So I see this huge potential. And of course, depending upon the requirements of the defense services, the percentage of people who have to be deployed permanently can vary. So this is what I feel strongly, that this is an opportunity for young people out of nothing, without spending a penny. They get trained, they get money also, and they are fit enough physically, mentally to face the world. And there are a number of co-panelists who mentioned about 2.5 challenge. That half challenge I am talking about, these people, the half challenge used to be met by people like home guards and other people. Now, this will be a force which will be readily available. They are trained, skilled, and at any time, we can take their help to settle things within the country as well. So I think I'll give AAA to this scheme.
Wonderfully put across. This is a view probably which also needs to be discussed, and slowly as time goes by, people would start realizing the pros also of the scheme. I feel so, because no government, not only this, no government can be naive, according to me personally, to take such a drastic step. 12 lakh rupees at the end of 4 years, 12 lakh rupees at the end of 4 years in the hands of a 21, 22-year-old boy or a girl is not a small amount. It's not a small amount. Lieutenant General K. Rao, somebody who knows manpower planning, like to hear from you. Then probably we'll have some question answers. General VK might not join. He's just texting me, stuck, marriage anniversary. Any which ways, General K. Rao, take us through the presentation. How long would your presentation be, sir?
I think I'll take about 20 to 25. I'll cut short because in a lot of points as it is got covered. I'll try and skip wherever it is. There's an overlap. Okay.
So try to
about
do
25
it.
minutes.
Sir, presentation, sir, 10 minutes would be requested.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
May put on the good evening, everybody. I think it's indeed my proud privilege to be amongst you all today, to share some of my thoughts, and I'll run you through in a very fast this thing on the presentation. Somebody can somebody see the screen? What is that?
Yes.
Great. Okay. I'll try and skip the introduction part of it, but yes, it's been announced. There have been mixed reactions. These are two ends of the mixed reactions. Some people have said roll back, and some people have said modify. I'm the proponent of modify, because if a scheme which has been thought over by the armed forces themselves, duly modified maybe by the MOD, we need to look at it with an open mind to make a success of a scheme which has been introduced. Being from the armed forces, my disciplinary background wants me to look at it from that angle. It has long-term ramifications. So the whole scheme, there is a caveat in the sense that it will be a success, but it will be short of expectation, significant, unless there are some significant changes which are essential. As I told you, that approaches, let me put it on the full screen. Just a minute. Yeah. Good long-term this thing. Okay. I'm sure the armed forces have deliberated on this, analyzed it, and in detail. But the point which needs to be remembered is the ESMs with their vast experience do also understand the limitations. So the government needs to understand that the views which are being expressed by the ESMs are very valid. They are not ill-founded, and they should not be shied away from. And they should not get suspicious, because a lot of times the service people do interact with the ESMs to express their opinions, which possibly are not got heard. So we need to look at it with an open mind.
Sir, what's an ESMS,
Well,
sir? Because we are laymen. We are laymen here.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. There have been violent, I think, which is certainly not warranted, people already. But what really saddens me is some of the state governments have started looking at it as if the problem in reality is only of the center. I think that's not a very fair way of looking at things. So we need to look at the whole scheme in the correct perspective and try and see how we can make it perfect with all the ambassadors who are here. Yeah, a word of caution is that no segment of a society should resort to violence or arson, looting. Certainly, these are not the acceptable thing to do. When you're looking at the armed forces per se, we are not used to this. And I think that is made very clear by the tri-service people also, that any indiscipline will not be tolerated. And for that matter, taking in such indisciplined people will create more problems to the commanding officers. Right, immediate thoughts which have been also been mentioned by most of you. Did the scheme come too fast? Did we really prepare for the change? Did we attempt far too many issues in one go? These are the issues of the states. And the important thing, we need to understand that this long-term goals, long-term ramifications. Yes, unfortunately, it's important that there's a constructive criticism on point mistakes. So to that extent, I say that when the tri-service were giving a presentation, flagging models of other armed forces, that they follow the same schemes, I think it doesn't gel. You can't compare our armed forces. None of them have got 20,000 kilometers of live borders. None of them have got two adversaries. May not be 2.5, may come to 2.15. So at times when we try and project a particular scheme, people start looking at it and think that was not very well done. Right. So we need to really do apple to apple. Scheme, I think everyone is clear. I won't dwell on this. But let's go over to bullet number 4, the background and reasons scheme. I think possibly the thought process was that we have short service commission officers who also get permanent commission. They are not trained for 4 years like NDA and IMA. They are not trained for 2 years like IMA entries. They are trained for about a year and 2 months or so. So that was the background. Second, this thing is sometime in 2004, we had an aviation committee. Vimal Walkla, I think we crossed each other sometime long time back, right? And that's why I remember your face. So that is the time we had this 1:1.11, 1.1. That means for one ratio of regulars, you need to have 1.1 support cadre. This was, of course, for 2 reasons. One is to cut down the bill, pension bill, and yet at the same time have a youthful profile of officers who are there as a cutting edge at the fighting places. That itself has not been achieved. So possibly some of those lessons from that should have been incorporated, which was the shortfall there, should have been incorporated in the new scheme. I'm afraid that really has not gone taken correctly. The main reasons for Agneepath scheme, as I look at it, youthful profile, pension bill, respectable number of reserve liabilities, and the most important spin-off, which is intrinsic, which is not visible immediately, is the overall discipline in the youth and various building up of the great citizens of our mighty nation. Intention has been good, rolled out, presented and explained. That particular this thing has not been so very correctly done. We need to address certain issues even now. The present environment. I think one of why we find such this thing is there's always been a sometime trust deficit between the ESMs, ex-servicemen, and the government. This is unfortunate because this is a continuation of 1962 and some subsequent years. But let me be very honest, I'm not neither Bhakt nor Indira Gandhi Bhakt. When occasion comes, I said that Indira Gandhi is one of the finest leaders we had. Today we have a great leadership in Narendra Modi ji. So a fair amount of this deficit, trust deficit, has been made up. Well, OP may not have come to the entirety as such, but I think I was looking at it having been the chief coordinator of 6-pay commission for the 3 services. We have achieved a lot, maybe 80–90%. I've never calculated, but certainly we have done a lot. So the legacy of the past has been taken care of, and there are making amends. And right now, this trust deficit is on the upswing. Upswing, when I say that the deficit is decreasing, not the other way. So major expressed, I talked about major opinions expressed by the ESMs, some unexpressed feelings of the serving. And also the trust deficit, one of the reasons is the past history of lateral absorptions and reactions and the promises, unfulfilled promises, have always been a problem area as far as the ESMs are concerned. I look at it that way, that before we talk about the issues, there are basically 3 stakeholders in this entire. One is the entrants who are looking for opportunities. Second, the armed forces. Third, the government. I would have preferably said third, government, but right now I would have tried to group them into one. But as of now, since there are different opinions, I wouldn't like to group armed forces, government into one. As far the government is concerned, I think it's quite happy about it because the pension bill. Now, pension bill, let's dwell for a minute. I would not like to get into, can the government afford a higher defense budget? I will not like to get into that discussion. I would like to keep it out of the purview. For the simple reason, we can keep discussing. I personally feel that yes, they can afford more. But if the GDP is what it is, there are economists who have their views on that. So I will not get into the discussion, but I take it that with the present this thing, certainly there is a need to bring down the pension bill. And we are fortunate that the government has rightly identified the worth of the armed forces, and we are the only one who does not have a contributory pension scheme. Incidentally, even the civilians who are on the defense bill from 2004, they too are a part of the contributory pension. So this is our overview. And the government is also happy because they will get adequate reserves in civil population. Of course, I talked about sense of discipline. And the last bullet is, there are certainly some intrinsic issues to the armed forces. When you look at a broader distance, I feel that few issues have got a broad brush, I can call it. They're not been fully addressed. Okay. A minute on the aspirations of the youth, but naturally, a soldier aspirant earlier till today, what was he looking at? He was looking at it as a, forget about the patriotism. I'm more pragmatic. Most of the people who are joining, yes, they would like to serve the country, they would like to do wonders. But you cannot shy away from the point that they are looking at armed forces also as an employment avenue. If at all we say no to it and people are all Deshbhakt, it may not be very true. We are only fooling ourselves. So when these people want to join the armed forces, earlier they were looking at what as a career where they could retire by about 35, 50, enjoy the pension, enjoy the perks and privileges, which are go along with it. So what happened? Suddenly the new scheme dramatically has changed. There is no pension. There is uncertainty. 75% of the youth, they apprehend that they are being made the scapegoats. Like emergency commissioned officers, when we got commissioned in 1970, Baba sir, even I fought Kargil, but not during your time. In 71, we captured 13,620, right? So coming back to this particular thing. So those days, people used to talk about how are the emergency commission officers doing? But they have performed exceedingly well. Because training is a major requirement. Sorry for going a little this thing. Training is a major requirement. It should not be compromised. But yet at the same time, when there is crisis like leadership, they just come out of. In crisis, leadership comes out. People come out with a huge amount of patriotism, which is totally inwards. It comes saying that we should, it's not correct to say that we should bank on that. Government, good thing is the government has already started addressing certain issues, which is a very, very good sign. It's unlike that way. They understand the sentiments, I think. But however, the need for to do it faster and make it clearly visible. The next issue which even Himalaya has spoken about is change is one thing which has certainly not been addressed in the correct manner. Change has got to be gradual. People require gestation period. Even Thapar sir is talking about it. You can't just introduce a new scheme without preparing. Like if at all you want to plant a sapling, I'm sure you look at the ground, you look at the water, you look at the shade, you look at a tree guard, you look at some digging tools, you look at some manure, so many things you look at it. Currently, I think, and I'm afraid this 2 years of lull of pandemic could have well been utilized of 6 months preparing the ESMs, preparing the discussions. I think they would have done a better job on this. The last point, ambiguity. Ambiguity is another very, very problematic area, especially for youth who are.
General K. Rao's connection is gone.
Yeah.
He's come back. He's come back.
Are we back? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, we got cut in between. So the ambiguity could have been avoided because leave aside vested interests who are as it is working against this violence and arson. Leave them out for a minute. But ambiguity is thing which has not been addressed. On this, I think some got the people have covered it. The most important thing, I think, if you want to avoid ambiguity, the government with me, letters from the government, whichever is planned, you want to go and absorb so much in paramilitary forces. Those must be put up in the open domain. The speed with which, I'm sorry for being a little sarcastic, the speed with which the recruitment scheme has been put forth, why couldn't you even give that particular letter by the Ministry of Home? Put it in the open domain. Government of India letter number such and such, it has approved this thing, or a legislation which is there. Unless it's already out, I'm sorry if it is already out. Similarly, saying that we are taking unwanted like hell. These are the surplus people who are trained man which is available. He himself, with due apologies, should start looking at that he is getting a trained manpower. And that too, they are not making up the entire CRPF or whatever it is. There is a certain percentage of, and for that matter, the type of spin-offs which were given by sending the short service officers and emergency commissioned officers to the paramilitary forces. Some of them rose to DG police. Some of them rose to the DIG, minimum level was DIGs in BSF. People are forgetting that. So I think that sort of comment should be curbed. The other thing is, when I said change should be gradual, I think Himalayas also talked about it. Rather than starting with 25%, it's starting on a negative note. The minute you give a positive stroke to a person saying, all right, maybe we'll take in the first year 50%, 60%, maybe 70%. And gradually, after year, down 5%, 5% and come down to maybe within about 5 or 7 years. Because it is the most important thing when you're dealing with human beings. Like other in one of the discussions, somebody talked about it. No, we should not have shared this particular thing. It is a secrecy. The Ministry of Defense security matters, this secrecy. I disagreed with him. Yes, operation plans with timing of attack, place of attack are very, very important security. But when you're dealing with human beings, that is your biggest resource. You can't just shy away. A good decision, management decision, a good decision is a product of, is a function of quality of decision and acceptability. Biggest stakeholders are the human beings. So they could have shared this particular thing. They would have made this particular change a little more gradual. Similarly, why do you want to start with 46,000? As it is for 2 years, you're not taking the recruits about, let's say, 65,000 per year, about 1,30,000. Maybe you would have started with 1 lakh, 1,20,000, 46 and 45, like what do you call it? He has covered it. In 2 cycles, it will come to about 1 lakh. You could even start a little more, about 1.5 lakh. Then gradually keep bringing it down year after year. Many other ministries we have not addressed the issue. Maybe they are still debating on it. The earlier the positive stroke comes to a misunderstood, misrepresented scheme can be overcome by some more ministries which, if at all they have not really come out in the open, in black and white, they must come out as far as this lateral absorption is concerned. Unfortunately, in 6-pay commission, to some of us who are here, we presented an entire paper under Justice C. Krishna. I was the chief coordinator. It was presented, approved in the Ministry of Defense because the entire recruitment was to be done by the defense. You would have cut down on the training establishments, the recruitment process, the huge saving to the country. And we said that from 6 to 9 years, 4 years batch, we will give you good, bad, ugly, that sort of thing. We will not give you those are unwanted. Here are 10% upper bracket, 10% in the second bracket, 10% like that. We'll give you, you pick. That itself was shot down by Ministry of Home. Maybe I personally feel for myopic reasons or empire building or whatever you want to call it. I don't want to get into that discussion at this particular thing. But somebody commented, these people are overtrained. They might shoot at everybody. I think it's very silly. When we are looking at, the type of help we do the students in J&K in distress, any crisis, So it was an unwarranted comment, but the comment is there, right? Another thing I look at it is that the corporate, when you analyze the corporate absorptions, right? I think the figures may be quite dismal because I've dealt with manpower, I've dealt with recruitment, I've dealt with pension. I was the boss of the Director General for all the three. I do not know where the miss is. Either we are not able to really make it lucrative, but possibly a legislation has to come. I was attending a seminar in Deloitte of transition of the armed forces to corporate. And I was sharing my views with the HR manager of US. He was telling me there is a clear-cut rule there. About 3% have got to be accepted. And if at all the statistics yearly reports do not contain the 3%, there are tax penalties on that. And if at all the whole thing continues for years together, they said they have threatened the industry that they will be closed. So the legislation has to be made of that nature. And I'm sure, because the fear of unknown, I'm not saying some of firstly, of course, it is both-sided. The soldiers do not know what is the job content, how is it going to be treated, how is it going to be adjusted, that sort of thing. Similarly, the corporate, they themselves are not being really exposed to the amount of HR outstanding performances or qualities of the armed forces. So I think there is a need to come out with this thing that the corporates need to take in at least about 5%. The another important thing which has not been addressed is, you see, when you take these people around 10 plus and you say that by the time 4th year they finish 12th, some of them, let's say, want to pursue career in academics. Giving away about 4 years to the armed forces, they would not have touched anything about academics. It's impossible for these people to go and compete with various places and get seats. So there is a need to look at some reservations for this Agneepath or 0.05 or something in all the colleges, so that they make a beginning. That is those people who would like to get into the academics. As about 3 to 4 months specialist training is required. I'm sorry to say that chief may have over in the Director General of Arms and Services. Is an element. You cannot not saying that there is the cutting of the trade should be, and I think there is scope to review this 3-4 months additional training, like even Himalaya talked about. The training should not be compromised to such an extent. The second thing is that you just brushed off the entire 4 years of service. Why did you do this? Short service officers, they were given a data mission, and because they got only 1 year, 2 months training, unlike a regular officer who's supposed to be getting 2 years, the differential which is there of 1 year, 2 months or 1 year, 3 months was cut short in their seniority. Whereas here you're taking the four years. At least people who are stopped, give them some benefit of this particular service which has been rendered.
Now, sir, how many slides do we have?
There is nothing wrong.
Now, sir, how many
I
slides?
have another 3, I think. Maybe
Another?
Don't wait. 3.
Now, sir, 2 minutes we'll have to end because we'll have to
possibly should
do the closing remarks also.
Okay. Pilot scheme, I've talked about. Pension bill, yes. But only thing is there is a fear that the pension which is saved should get into capital. There should be certain assurance, because the people are looking at it, it will still not come into our kitty, it will go elsewhere. And we need to look at government leave that already civil employees are there. There is a need to look at mid-course corrections. No scheme should be totally closed chapter. If at all there is something to change. Well, since Amit has said conclusion ripples, right? But there will be ripples. But I look at it that way, that the scheme is a good scheme. It requires a little changes here and there. You need to give a little more training to the recruits. Don't expect the commanding officers. Yes, they are all cutting it. They are the best people. They can do wonders. You can see them doing great things. But at the same time, we cannot just push it down their throat to say that there is no specialized training. So we need to look at the training a little more, and we need to accept inputs from all. For that matter, like Amit possibly is looking at it, I had a word with VK also on this. Inputs which are going back must be incorporated, whatever they are worth, and make use of ESMs as ambassadors, which has been one of the biggest mistakes, that possibly you're not really getting the people into so much of confidence. That's all I say. And whatever changes which are looking at it, sooner the better. Thank you, Amit. I think I've stuck to my time. All yours.
Thank you, General Rao. Closing remarks. I think we should have closing remarks from all of you. Probably we can start with Colonel Thapar Saab. 1 minute each closing remarks.
Okay, actually, you see, the evolution of any organization is a continuous process, and this is one step in that direction. I mean, we have to keep on evolving, but the dimensions of the change that have taken place are enormous, and that has been done so privately, and so the other people who are concerned with it have not been consulted at all, neither have they been educated. So that is one big. The second point that I want to make is that ever since the scheme has been announced, we are tweaking it almost every day. Something or the other is being modified or changed. So if this was the case, it appears that it requires a lot of work still to be done before you can call it as even a modicum of success. That's what I feel. That a lot of work is. And the last point is that you must give a guarantee. I see no reason with the honchos lined up to give employment to these guys. Why can't we give them a guaranteed re-employment after they finish their 4 years? That'll make a big difference.
Bawa Saab, if you're there, Asha, Consul Himalaya Singh ji, Lieutenant General Consul Himalaya Singh, sir, your closing remarks.
Yeah. As my closing remark, I can only say that, the people who are in uniform right now and the Ministry of Defense, those who have taken the decision must have gone through, they must have mulled over in detail. But still, the requirement for further refining the modification cannot be wished away. And in order to implement it in the manner that is desired. So I only hope that the government comes out with a little more focus and clarity as far as the relocation and other modifications and improvements are.
Yes, Consul Bhai.
Yeah, I finished. Did you hear my
Yeah.
comments?
We heard your view that you need more refinement. You are suggesting more refinement.
And it should be, the government must come out with, specific clarity, like relocation, how much, where, some kind of a formal orders that need to be done in order to assuage the feelings of the people. And last but not the least, I'm more concerned about the organizational culture, the unit ethos, the fighting. I mean, as Colonel Thapar, sir, rightly mentioned, it is the collective bravery or collective will of the unit that matters in war. Individuals matter, but the more important is the collective, the integrity, the unit cohesiveness that is more important in a warlike condition. Thank you.
I feel that competitiveness will definitely be cutthroat in the army once these boys know that 4 years down the line, only 1 out of the 4 will stay back. So it's just like, yet another IIT entrance, and the kind of people that are going to be churning out, the army is going to churn out, I'm sure it's going to be much better. Anyways, Umesh Singh Babaji, closing remarks.
Yeah, you see, since the scheme has been put and be rolled out, now we must look at the corrections that are required to be made. Like, first and foremost thing is that these guys who are leaving this, who are not selected in first 25%, at least, another 25% should be absorbed in paramilitary forces and other forces. And they should be assured of their, next employment. Rest 50% could start their own business, but whatever things are like, And secondly, what I want to say is, I've heard that, this is going to be all India adoption, all India recruitment, which I feel, for infantry battalions, Like we are all, Jat regiment, Rajput regiment, Madras regiment and all. We should not tinker with that regimentation at all. Because today a man fights for his qawm. A Jat fights for his Jat, being a Jat. He fights for the village he belongs to. And there are other people also from the same village who are in the same unit. If we have all India adoption into our infantry regiments, that spirit of, that die-hard thing spirit will go off.
Cohesion.
And therefore, I want the regimentation of the infantry battalions to be maintained when the intake of these guys is there during in the infantry battalions at least. Thank you.
Okay, Vaklu Saab, fast, quickly, your closing remarks. So your mic is off.
Sorry. Well, while I agree with all my co-panelists here, but at the same time, I feel that, seeing the reaction which happened just within a day when nobody had understood the scheme. I mean, on the first day, I think it was announced on Thursday and Friday, there was fire all over. I think after that, the interaction with people indicated that people were not aware of anything at all. It was just like a toolkit that people were instigated to sort of burn out things. So, this needs to be taken more in a comprehensive way. There's nothing wrong with the scheme. Yes, it needs tweaking, as the experts have mentioned here, so as to suit the defense forces in a perfect way. But at the same time, we have to understand that 4 years of training, 4 years of training is going to do good to people. And those people who get trained in the professional courses, paying their own money, don't get any assured jobs. It is only after they prove themselves in the field or, they're left open to everything. So if they are assured of job right from the beginning, I think that also is going to lead to serious troubles.
Final remarks. Our opening and closing batsman has always been the same. Brigadier Ajit Apteji.
Aircraft or any to enter Indian space or even do any bombing of Indian cities. I would like to bring that point to the note of all non-defense personnel. We have given our everything to protect the sovereign territorial integrity of this nation. And I think that is the biggest work that we have done, people who have worn the uniform. So let the people know that this is not a compulsory military scheme. You don't like it, don't come. But of course, I will finally suggest that this scheme could have been launched with a mixture. Don't do away with the 19 years service. Keep that. Let that be, let's say, 80%, 20% you do this new recruitment scheme. Then gradually in the next 4-year cycle, make it to 60-40, finally make it 50-50, and then weed it out by taking these so-called Agniveers that you're calling them, which I don't wish to call them, because I feel it is one common recruitment scheme, and henceforth we should drop this word Agniveer or Agneepath and whatever we want to suffix them. I only know one thing which General Rao will agree with me. We are both gunners. We've seen war in 71. We had a fire plant called Agni Varsha, which was thunderous and gave us tremendous success. So on that note, I'll say that we veterans need to understand that this scheme cannot be rolled back. The ball has been set rolling. It will continue to roll, but it needs to be modified. It needs to be tweaked, and it needs to be made user-friendly for those people who ultimately don't get selected. As General Rao very correctly brought out, like you have 2% CSR for all companies, I feel there should be a proper order by the government that all PSUs will take minimum 10%, all industry and all corporate houses will take minimum 5 to 10%. And that way, in fact, I've heard Baba Kalyani speak on the television, he's a big industrialist, that we will get trained manpower, disciplined manpower into our corporates. So be it. Yes, there's no doubt. In fact, let me tell you, I've served in the army for 36 years. I've been in the corporate sector at vice president level for 12 years. And I know that they respect the armed forces very much. So on that note, I'll say that it is a scheme which we have to accept fait accompli. But a good point which Brigadier Bawa brought out is that possibly you could restrict this 4-year scheme to non-combat arms to start with, give it to the logistics like the ASC, ordnance and others, and then gradually induct it into the fighting arms like the artillery, armored corps, infantry and the mechanized infantry, and of course the Army Air Defense. So on that note, I'll say, Amit, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been an educative experience. And as you know, the ball is already rolling and the recruitment schemes are commencing from 15 July. So I wish the nation and the armed forces all the very best. Thank you.
I would like to thank all of you today for having been, part of this wonderful discussion. This is a very primary discussion that we probably, according to me, we had the man who handled General K. Rao, he's still there, General K. Rao, who handled manpower planning, pension as a Director General for the military operations and all that. He gave a very, very apt, he gave a wonderful presentation. But all said and done, personally, I feel that this is yet another very, very important step taken by the Narendra Modi ji government, just like GST, just like demonetization. This is yet another big, very, very big step that has been taken. And I feel that personally, as long as security aspects have been, properly taken care of, and they are properly taken care of, rest all is all only politics that we'll keep talking till the cows come home. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Look forward to meeting you again. Thank you and Jai Hind.